Hi everyone, Chris Harden here again. I'm continuing my video series on the source code and operations of Ollama Game Cards. It's an open source, free to use, free to edit Python app that uses large language model for generating trivia questions for you and also generating images that you can use to make PDFs of printable game cards, like trivia game cards at home. So if you're interested in how to use diffusion models or large language models on a local computer, this is a fun little project you can download and try. And so what I'm doing today is I'm picking up where I left off last time. Last time, my previous video, I just gave an introduction on how to use it. And today I'm actually going to show you how to do the second part, which is use ComfyUI to generate the back of the image, the back of the image that goes on the back of your card. So where I left off last time, let me hit cancel on this for a minute. This is the application. I had done like a Mary Poppins type of thing, or trivia. Today I'm going to do Wolverine. So I'm just going to go Wolverine. It's going to set up everything to generate the card set. Now normally it's set to the choice to generate the back of the image is set to false, and you get a default image here that has a bunch of question marks, but I'm going to change it to true because the purpose of this particular video is to show you what basically the application is doing when it's talking to ComfyUI. Let me take a minute and just bring up what the mermaid diagram here is. This is on GitHub. You can look at it. And I kind of went over this in the last video, but I want to show it to you here. What I'm talking about right now in this video is this column where main calls into a little Python app basically that reaches through a WebSocket to ComfyUI and reaches to a Stable Diffusion XL model. So if you're familiar with diffusion models, you know that Stable Diffusion XL is really good for open source library that you can use to generate images. So that's what we're doing tonight. So I've got Wolverine imagery here. That's what comes in with default, but I'm going to actually do something a little more intelligible. This is the prompt that gets fed to, let me close out a couple of these windows here and I'll show you. It gets actually fed to ComfyUI, and this is the interface. So I'll talk about that in just a minute, but let me get it started first. So if you're familiar with Midjourney, or there's several of them out there now for making images, I'm going to say comic book style Wolverine with brilliant colors, and maybe I'll say jumping with claws. Yeah, comic book. Let's do it this way. Comic book style with brilliant colors of Wolverine. There we go. Jumping with claws out. Okay, let's see if that's going to get us a decent one. So I've set this to true. In the future, I'm going to make this a checkbox. I just haven't done it yet. And I like the 2.5 by 2.5 card format. I'm not going to change that. If you watched the previous video, you know you could make that more of a portrait style. Well, actually, I'll tell you what. Maybe for this one, I will do a portrait style. That actually might look cooler. And so what you do is you go to PF Layouts and you choose the... I'm going to choose the landscape. The 2.5 by 3.5 is going to be portrait style. And let's see what happens with that. So that's going to take a little time. I'll walk you through what happens. Right now it's talking to Llama 3 and it's getting the trivia questions, the Q&A. So in the diagram, it's over here talking right now through Ollama and Llama 3.1. But when it gets the questions in, it's going to feed all that stuff, and then the next thing it's going to do is go to ComfyUI. And you can kind of tell where it's at in the process because ComfyUI has its own little command line interface. It has a command line interface there. And you can see it starting to work through the process. So it's already started talking to Llama 3.1, gotten its information, it's done with Llama 3.1. Now it's over here talking to ComfyUI. And let me jump into the ComfyUI interface. This is the web GUI. When you run ComfyUI, you get this GUI. And if you can see over here, it's actually talking to Stable Diffusion Extra Large Base 1.0. This kind of comes out of the box. You do a little bit of wiring in here if you've never done ComfyUI, but it's super friendly to get to know. So you can just download ComfyUI and run it like this through the GUI. Lots of fun. What I encourage you to do is try it out. You come up here and you put in your prompts. This is an older prompt I had from last time. And if you don't want things in there, you go into the negative prompt. But you don't really have to change too much. The one thing I'd say is make sure that if you're preparing an image for the cards, it needs to be at least 3 inches by 3 inches wide. So here you see I've got it at 900 pixels, which at 300 dots per inch is a 3 inch by 3 inch wide. Now the cards are actually 2.5 inches wide, so I probably could make that more specific. But it so happens that the card generator software that I have in here, it automatically resizes the card backs. This little module right here resizes the card backs. So even if you have your own image, it'll scale it down for you. Anyhow, this is kind of it. Now when you run ComfyUI, where it's talking from this GUI, then all these little boxes light up, which is really nice. You kind of see where it's at in the process, and it pops out a little image on here on the end. And when we're going through the API, which is what we're doing here, we're going through a WebSocket. Right there, it goes in generate image with SD Python. It has a WebSocket, and the WebSocket talks to ComfyUI. So it has a little server here, which coincidentally is what the interface is talking to. Anyway, see, it's all done, but you get this little percentage bar as it's baking through the image, and then when it's done, the API hands us back a handle, and you can see here that actually pulled the handle in right here. And so the file it actually made was generated image Wolverine Trivia 90 PNG, and it's all done now. So I talked a lot, but let's go have a look and see what that looks like. While I'm here, by the way you launch ComfyUI, this is the GitHub. You install it from GitHub, and then you run it for a CPU or GPU. You really do need to have a GPU. Running these diffusion models with the CPU is just like watching paint dry. Okay, so let's see. Let me go to my project, back over here, Game Cards, Output. All right, so there's the Wolverine Trivia. As I mentioned to you last time, I just default it to 12. So if you want 100, you can do 100 or 50 or whatever. At some point, though, you are going to not get as many questions back because you're going to run out of a token limit. It seems like Llama's really good around 60 or 70 cards worth. Anyhow, let's see how ComfyUI did with the images now. Not bad, not bad. So this is a one-shot. Now, normally with ComfyUI, you'll do a batch size, and you can come in here and tweak it. And you're like, well, that might be good enough. Maybe I don't want to do anything else. But what you could do is you're like, well, maybe it's not exactly what I want. So maybe you take your prompt. This depends on how much fun you want to have. Let me go to ComfyUI, and I'll put the prompt in over here, like that. And if I like something more, I'm zooming in too far. There we go. Claws out. Let's say no bad fingers. And I thought that was pretty good. But let me just see if there's something else I want to say. Like, what's up with that red bit on his hand there? I'm not sure. So let's see if we can get it to do something a little better. Good hands. Good inks. Excellent lighting. Let's see if that makes it any better. Like, so this, I'm giving you a little tutorial on ComfyUI as well. But if you're running ComfyUI to do this and you fiddle around, when you run the PDF generator, make sure you set the value back to 1. But right now I'm going to leave it at 4. I'm going to move it up to 4 because I want a batch size of 4. So enter, and then I'm going to run it. And I hit, cue the prompt. Okay, so you can see, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of going through the process here. The green's all lit up as to where it's going on, what stage it is on. You can also come over here and kind of see the back end of how it's talking. So right now, this 7% done. This is where the hard work's being done. It's got the seed number in there. It's got 60 steps. So if you increase the step count, you'll also get a better quality image for what it's worth. There's different types of samplers you can use. You can see mine if you like those. But you can also go online and download copies. People build these, and this ComfyUI is so awesome. You can grab someone's, essentially it's a YAML or a JSON file, drag it into here, and it'll lay it all out for you. All you have to do is just do a little digging. Anyhow, so this is what the experience looks like. And I also, I encourage you, I talk about this in the actual install as well, in the README file at the bottom. When you're in loading up ComfyUI, here's the URL for it, as well as ComfyUI Manager. You're really going to want that. So don't skimp on yourself. Get that. It makes managing ComfyUI easier. So grab that. And here's the instructions for getting Stable Diffusion installed as well. And I do recommend that you generate a few cards first. And then once you like the quality of it, then you jump into the PDF generator. It's also a ton of fun just to see this thing work and try to mess with it and see what you can come up with. Anyway, so you can see, by the way, while we're still waiting on that, you can see in the images directory, source images, some of the other images that I've created here. I'm just going to zoom in a little more. I had a little crazy robot, handyman, plumber, another robot. I was particularly interested in robots at the time, a Santa Claus. And this right here was supposed to be a dog, but as you see it was sort of like split in fourths. That's because I ran ComfyUI with that batch file set to 4. And come to think of it, I bet you that's what happened over here. But there's a cute little dog it made, etc. And there's my Wolverine from earlier, and there's a resized image. There's my, Spider-Man, and as you can see here, this is also SpongeBob. Okay, let's see if Comfy's done. Ooh, look at that. Much better. Okay, so here's the thing. I'll bet you that, let me kind of show you the API code. I'll geek out with you just a bit here, and then I'll stop. But I'll bet you that the settings I have in my API call could really use some love versus what I have in that the layout that you see here. I'm going to go back and see if I've got some changes I can make. But if you go to the code, remember this is open source code. I encourage you to try it out yourself. This is how you set up the API call. It used KS sampler, config set to 8. That might be one of the problems. Maybe I didn't give it enough samples. I used the Euler sampler here, but there's the SCXL base. So let's say if you wanted to use a different one, this is where you come in and configure that. I actually did use a couple of other ones. I just happened to want to stick with Stable Diffusion. Okay, latent image information. So all this stuff is right here. You set it all up, basically in this XML or structure, and then you send it over to the API. I'll bet you that's what it is. I'll bet you I did not do enough levels, whatever the iteration count is here, because 60 is pretty good. So that's at least the tip. I might go in there and see if I can tweak this. I actually grabbed this code either from a sample, maybe from the API sample. Actually, it's Stable Diffusion's website. I bet you that's where I got it. Anyway, so let's get back to the topic at hand. What you could then do, now that you've got this image over here, is you can move this image into your images directory and refer to it. And let me see if I can remember where ComfyUI puts its images. Let's go back to AI, ComfyUI, Windows. I think it's just an output directory. Yeah, there you are. There's some other ones that I've done. There's Wolverine, the much better Wolverine. Yeah, see, I got some config work. I'm going to copy that over into my images directory. There we are. Let's call it Wolverine. Control C. Now let's go back to AI generator and let's put this in here. Okay, now the one thing you need to also do is set this back to false. Otherwise, it will run the image generation again, which I really don't care to do a second time. Now I'm just going to generate the PDF. Okay, so the generation is done. It's everything's complete here. So let's go have a look once more at the output folder. Let's go back here and look at our new Wolverine back cards. There we go. Now you notice here squeezing them because this is a 3.5, and yet I made a square image. So I've got an opportunity to improve this by resizing as opposed to squeezing it like it's doing. But at least that gets you a basic Wolverine background along with your trivia cards, and you can go and have some fun with your friends. Okay, that'll be it for now. I encourage you to download, try this out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening.